Morning, everyone.
Good morning, Rabbi.
Good morning, Rabbi.
We are learning Mishnah Shabbos, Perek Hey, Chapter 5, Mishnah Beis, Mishnah 2. I want to dedicate this morning's learning in memory of my mother, Miss Shalamis Rabinowitz, Shalamis Mas Rabbi Yaakov Eliezer. Chamar Yoitze. So again, now the discussion is continuing what an animal can go out into a public domain wearing. What's considered a burden, what's considered a garment for it. And we had examples yesterday of things by which you control it. It's considered not a burden, not a load, but like a garment. So now we have other examples. And chamor, yoitz b'mardas. A donkey can go outside on Shabbos wearing what's called a saddle cloth. Now, a saddle cloth, they explain here, is that donkeys tend to feel cold at all times. Did you know that? Donkeys feel cold at all times.
I never asked.
Now, to keep a donkey warm, a saddle cloth, which is a cushion that goes under the saddle, will be put on its back and left there the entire day. Since the donkey needs it for warmth, it is not a burden, but an article of clothing. That's very clear. Something you wear for warmth, or the animal wears for warmth, that's like a clothing. And that's not considered a burden. That's not considered a load. Okay? Now, but it's so the donkey can go out with the saddle cloth, bizman shehi kshuralai, when it is tied to it. Which really means there's two things here. The saddle cloth has to be tied to the donkey, and it also means it has to be tied to the donkey before Shabbos. The reason it has to be tied is because if it's not tied, we're afraid it's going to fall down into the ground. You'll pick it up and carry it in the street on Shabbos, which you may not do. It needs to be tied to the donkey before Shabbos because on Shabbos there'll be a different problem, and that is that on Shabbos there is a Zera D'Rabbanan, there is a rabbinic decree that we cannot use an animal on Shabbos. So, for instance, you want to lean on an animal on Shabbos. You can't. You can't lean on an animal on Shabbos. You can't ride an animal on Shabbos. Now, when you tie this saddle cloth to the donkey, you can't just stand there and tie it on. You have to lean yourself on the donkey to tie it on tight. It comes out, therefore, that when you're tying this on Shabbos, even if you'll make a Shabbostic knot, even though it'll be a kind of a knot that you can make on Shabbos, you've got a different problem, which is that you're going to be leaning on the animal, which is a rabbinic prohibition. And as a matter of fact, the Bartanura points out that if you do this, meaning let's say you transgress this rabbinic prohibition of using the animal, they gave you a fine, not a monetary fine, but a fine that says the animal can go out on Shabbos down the street. We consider it like it is carrying because you did not keep that rabbinic prohibition. Okay, so that's the first one. The animal.
Is that forever? Or?
No. I think it's just that's Shabbos. Mm-hmm. So now, that's the first example. The donkey goes out with the saddle cloth when it's tied. Next example. Zacharim yoitzin levuvim. Zacharim males means male sheep, which we call ram. Mm-hmm. They go outside levuvin. Levuvin means that their reproductive organs are covered with a heart-shaped leather pouch. Heart-shaped means that it's narrow on top, wide on the bottom. And the purpose of this was to prevent it from mating. Now, why would that be why is that considered, what's that doing for the animal? The answer is because if the ram mates too much, it gets weak. So you're trying to prevent it, the owner trying to prevent it from doing that so that it won't get weak. So that means you're doing it for the sake of the animal, right? Call it to protect the animal, call it to help the animal function function properly, but that the animal can go out with on Shabbos because of the fact that, again, it serves a purpose for the animal. Next example. Rechelais, yoitzais, shechuzais, kavulais, ukavunais. Rechelais are female sheep, which we call ewes. Okay?
As in ewes, guys.
Okay. So they can go outside. The first example is they go out shechuzais. Shechuzais means their tails are held up. And that's to expose the reproductive organ so that they should mate. Okay, that's the first one. Kavulais means the tail is tied down to cover the reproductive organ. Now, in the second case, you're covering the reproductive organ of the female so that it shouldn't mate. Why would you want to do that? In the first example, you're tying the tail up so that it should mate. And apparently, and we're saying that it can go out with tied up like that on Shabbos. It's not considered that whatever it's tied up with, not considered a burden because it's helping the animal function. And, you want the animal to reproduce. Maybe, I'm just taking a guess to take it a step further. Maybe there are times you want it to reproduce because if it doesn't reproduce, then it could maybe in some way stop it in the future from producing. That's just a speculation. But the point is, it seems that when it's time that you want it to reproduce, that's considered helping it function properly. When you don't want it to reproduce, it's explained down here, it's because of the fact that it's nursing. And because it's nursing, you don't want it to become pregnant because then it loses its milk. So that's another thing. That's another example of going out with something that's considered to protect or help the animal function. Ukavunais. Kavuna means wrapped. Wrapped means that on a day that a ewe is born and its fleece is perfectly clean, a garment is tied around it, protected from becoming soiled. Now that one is very much like a garment in the sense of, it protects you from getting dirty, right? Protects your clothing. In this case, its fleece is brand new. It's perfectly clean. You want to protect it. So you wrap it in this some kind of a covering. And that covering, again, is to protect the animal. It's not considered a burden. And then the last example of the Tanakh, last example of the first opinion of the Mishnah is the goats may go outside with their teats wrapped tightly. Okay, you want them to where their milk comes from. You're tying it tightly together to stop them from producing milk. Okay, by tying it tight, it doesn't produce milk. And why do you want to do that? Not sure exactly, but apparently there's a time where you don't want the animal to produce milk. Or another, so true literally means wrapped up or tied up, and it means tied up tightly, because either you want to tie up the teats so that it will not produce milk, or actually, and this is interesting to me, that another reason you tie them would be to tie them not so tight, because you don't want to stop the milk from being produced, but rather you want to catch milk that's dripping out. Now, I don't know why that's not like, carrying milk. Yeah. I don't know why, but and from the Mishnah, it's clear that it's not, even according to the ones who are going to argue soon. It's not, well, I shouldn't say that, at least according to a different opinion in the Mishnah soon. But it seems like the Tanakama and even we'll see another Tana in the Mishnah are going to feel that, catching the milk is helping it function properly, because if it drips on the ground, you're going to lose the milk. That's not the functioning of the goat. If the goat is supposed to be making milk, not supposed to be spilling its milk out, it's supposed to be keeping its milk.
On the other hand, maybe the goat would be uncomfortable with it blocked up.
But that's not bothered. But that's not why you're tying it on. Either you're tying it on tight because you uncomfortable or not, you don't want the milk producing, or you're putting it on not as tight because of the contrary. If you make it too tight, it's not going to produce the milk. The problem is it seems to be dripping out. You want to catch it. So even though it seems like it's for you to have the milk, apparently the Mishnah considers that helping the animal function properly. Okay, now. Rabbi Yossi Oiser Bekulan, the opinion of Rabbi Yossi is that all the examples mentioned in this Mishnah are all forbidden, chutz min harachelim hakfunos, besides for the lambs that are wrapped up. And according to Rabbi Yossi, let's look at an example of the ram that's wrapped up. It's got this beautiful clean fleece. You want it to go in and stay clean. You're protecting its fleece. So he says that's not a burden. But if you're going ahead and you have this goat that you're trying to go ahead and tighten up its teeth so it shouldn't produce milk, or you're tying its tail down so that it shouldn't mate, or you're covering it so it shouldn't mate. So again, clearly these things, according to the Tanakhama, were done to protect the animal, but apparently Rabbi Yossi wants it to be more similar to a garment. That's my understanding. He wants it more similar to a garment. A garment protects you, right? A garment is not there to do other things like the examples mentioned before. And therefore, because he wants it to be like a garment, or call it more like sometimes the word is used, takshin, and adornment. That's what he wants for the animal. And therefore, the only thing that's not going to be considered a burden is going to be when the lamb is wrapped up to protect its fleece. Now, it's brought down here also that Rabbi Yossi would agree to the saddlecloth by the
That's what I was
donkey.
going to say. That's more.
He's going to agree there too because of the fact that it's giving warmth.
Yeah.
But the other ones, that's Rabbi Yossi argues and says it's considered carrying.
Mm-hmm.
Rabbi Yehuda says, "Izim yotzei tzerurais liyabesh." The goats can go out tzerurais liyabesh, tied up to dry them up, but not for the milk. So he makes a distinction, Rabbi Yehuda. First of all, he agrees with the Tanakama. All the examples mentioned in the Tanakama, except for one, is going to be considered not carrying. You can have the animal go out on Shabbos with it. But when it comes to the last example about tying up the goat, there he says it depends. If you're tying it for the purpose of drying it up, which means you're tying it tightly, then it can go out. But if you're doing it to catch the milk, then you're not tying it up tightly. And then the problem is, according to Rabbi Yehuda, they were afraid it's going to fall off. And he'll come to carry it because it fell off. So he doesn't have it as his problem is he's coming with a different problem, Rabbi Yehuda. It's not because he holds it doesn't fit within the parameters of why it can go out and not be considered a burden. It fits within the parameters. It's for helping the animal. Nonetheless, we have another concern, a concern that because it's not tied on that tight, it could fall off on Shabbos while you're in the street, and you're going to just take it and carry it. And therefore, because of that, Rabbi Yehuda says this case he argues on. The goats going tied only for the purpose of carrying the milk, that they can't go out with because we're afraid they're going to fall off. You may come to carry it on Shabbos in a public domain. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful Shabbos.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you very